Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Well, welcome. For those who came during this sit, welcome. I want to acknowledge that some people did arrive in different places. And I want to, welcome again, JD, but let's go first introduce ourselves, okay? And, in context of Hal's passing, I think let's slow down. It just made me think every one of us plays such a role, however frequent or sporadically come. It's a small enough intentional group that every one of us really makes a difference here. So let's honor that by just slowing down our naming process if we can. Take a breath in between the person before you, and you'll know when I facilitate, just in honoring the practices in many communities outside of here, they encourage people to share your preferred personal pronoun as well with your name. If it's something you're comfortable with as a practice, it's being done in more and more circles. My name's David, he, him.
I'm Shantanu.
I'm Jason, he, him.
I'm Bob.
Alzak, he, him.
Michael, he, him.
Christian, he, him.
Andre.
Greg.
My name is Mark, he, him.
My name is Douglas, he, him.
My name is Cass, he, him, she, her, they.
Eduardo.
My name is Justin. I'm Clint, and I just want to interject. Hal was a very sweet, kind person, and I deeply grieve his loss.
My name is Jerry, he, him.
My name is Jeff, he, him.
My name is Stephen.
Don.
Jay.
Bob.
Michael.
Jack. I'm Mike.
John, he, him.
Peter. Marty.
Suzanne, she, her, they.
I'm Tom. My name is Ray.
I'm Pat.
Tony, he, him.
I'm David.
My name is JD, and I use they, them pronouns.
Welcome, JD. Say a few words. JD is a core teacher with the East Bay Meditation Center and has served on the board there, as well as being a co-founder of the LGBTQI meditation group, which is also known as the Alphabet Sangha, that meets on Tuesday nights. So many letters. Yeah. JD is also was or is still in teacher training at Spirit
One more
Rock?
year.
One more year. In teacher training with Spirit Rock Meditation Center. And they were also a public school teacher for many years with a focus on equity and access. So welcome, JD. Thanks for being here.
I'm sorry, I can't remember your name, but
Clint.
I'm really taken with this idea of how, we create and respond to the needs of our community, and, just hearing everybody's names and welcoming everyone here. I really want to honor the space that we have and create a space for what is needed to be responsive to our community here. And I loved Hal as well, and went and saw him a couple weeks ago, and not this past week. And that's the life of our bodies. And so I want to say a few words and then create opportunity for people to share. And we can turn the mic off. We don't, I don't want to take up space that's, we can use however we want. Just because there's a formula doesn't mean we always have to follow it. That's why we're here, right? So, do what we want. So, now that I'm a Dharma teacher, I carry poems around. So I'm going to read one, and it's by, as many of you may know, John O'Donoghue, who was an Irish priest, poet, philosopher. And this one is called Benacht, which is Gaelic word that means blessing. On the day when the weight deadens on your shoulders and you stumble, may the clay dance to balance you. And when your eyes freeze behind the gray window and the ghost of loss gets into you, may a flock of colors, indigo, red, green, and azure blue, come to awaken you in a meadow of delight. When the canvas frays in the currach, which is a boat, currach of thought, and a stain of ocean blackens beneath you, may there come across the waters a path of yellow moonlight to bring you safely home. May the nourishment of the earth be yours. May the clarity of the sunlight be yours. May the fluency of the ocean be yours. May the protection of the ancestors be yours. And so, may a slow wind work these words of love around you, an invisible cloak to mind your life. I say, sharing this with this place of a tender heart that, before I arrived here and learned of house passing, I was woke this morning with a tender heart in the world that we're engaging in right now, where the United States is being seen as a place of such violence that other countries are being warned not to visit. And a friend recently reminded me of how, when he was growing up, his mom and his sister would sit and look at, war-torn countries elsewhere and be kind of like, oh, those poor people. And kind of having this heart of tenderness that, is meeting the current world. And it's so easy to turn away, turn away from loss, turn away from emotions, turn away from family, turn away from beloved community. There's so much aloft in this moment that it feels really important to me to not have my voice be the only one in the room, to have the diversity of people who are here, who are touched, and to allow themselves to be touched by someone. To me, like for me, one of the places that is such a beauty is that, he loved the Dharma so much that he was a cheerleader for me, because then he would be like, yeah, be a Dharma teacher, that's a great place to be. And so it's just so touching, that spirit of how we are connected. And I know how through Baruch, who is a really good friend of mine, so I met him outside of this sangha and have just felt touched. And so really want to allow ourselves to be touched by, what happens in community to each other. So I think I'm just going to stop there. And I don't know if people want to turn the mic off so we could share, or leave the mic on to be a record. I don't really know what the formula is, so I'm just putting it out there.
I would leave it on. I would leave it on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how are people feeling?
Yes.
Anybody feel otherwise? We could turn it off if we need to at that point. I don't know how it works, but I'm assuming it's technology. You can do that sort of thing. So I just want to say that people who feel moved to share do that in the spirit of knowing that others may want to share, and that we share in different ways, and sometimes just being present is a sharing in of itself, and there's not, the words are sometimes elevated in our community, and that there may be just the holding of the space and the beauty would be part of it, and we'll all be here in the way that we are. So just being mindful of your time as well.
I just want to just reflect this before we go
please.
further. But just in regards to what you had just said, and this story about your friends looking at other war-torn countries, I just want to recognize the fact that actually many communities in the United States have actually been living in violence for many years prior to what the dominant culture is experiencing in this country.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and I was reminded while I was sitting of, the ACT UP where, like silence equals death. And to me, that's part of, kind of the sense of you having been through that movement, many of you here, I'm sure, as well. And so bringing it in as a voice right now, and I apologize for not bringing in the histories of it.
No,
so.
and it wasn't to critique you or anything like that. It just was to reflect.
Yes, thank
the
you.
Broader.
Thank you. Yeah.
Experiences.
Yeah. And to me, like just and being part of that lineage that is significant. So thank you. Yeah. Please.
I knew Hal. We were intimate friends about 35 years ago. And I knew his two sons, Owen and Nick. Owen was 12 at that time, and Nick was 10. And wonderful kids. And Hal was such a loving father. And I formed a close tie to his children, too. And we drifted apart. I didn't see Hal again until he got involved with GBF. I'll keep this short. But he was such a sweet, gentle man. He had a wonderful, kind sense of humor. Very funny, but never biting. And I don't know. I mean, I deal with my own anger and my own rage about things, and Hal just didn't embody those qualities. And he was a model for me about maybe it's better to be less angry and less full of hate. I was going to see him tomorrow. I went with his partner, Ron, and I'm so sorry. I feel so bad I wasn't able to say goodbye to him before he left. So that's all I have to say. I was thinking of him yesterday, and I just wish him all the best in his journey that he's on right now. That's all.
Would it be possible to ring the bell in between? Can we ring the bell in between?
Yeah, I saw a part of Hal that people in GBF may not have seen. I met Hal through GBF, and then we formed a reading and writing group that Cass and Peter Washburn and I and Hal were part of, 4 of us. And we would meet every other week, and we would read what we had written, and then we would comment on each other's writing. And I was impressed from the very beginning at how Hal managed to be both critical and affirming at the same time. And his comments were they were like laser beams. I mean, he would just hit the nail on the head if there was a problem with somebody's writing. But it wasn't just sort of false cheering either. He would be critical, and at the same time supportive and affirming. And it's one of the most affirming experiences I've had when I, with my own writing, getting his feedback on things. He was an editor, that's what he did for most of his life. And you really saw how well honed his skills were and how smart he was. And the other thing, right at the very beginning of this reading group, as we were getting to know each other well, he would give me rides to and from the reading group. And he once said, here are some things that have come to me while meditating. And there were fragments of poems or sentences. And I was impressed how he managed to share those things without, he was not showing off. He was very quiet and unassuming. And I will miss his intelligence. Very few people are able to be critical and affirming at the same time. And he did. His level-headedness and his intelligence.
I share the feeling of a tender heart. I didn't get to know Hal as much as I would have liked. I met him through GBF. First connected with him during the eye gazing exercise at the retreat I did in the fall. And he was such a great being. His capacity for compassion and understanding and wisdom. And I don't know specifically how high, but one of his best friends said his IQ is just off the charts. And he had that capacity to be really tender and also tough, or constructive way. And I got to be partner with him in arranging the speakers for the last 4 years or 5 or so, and that was a wonderful experience. He really knows how to do that. He did, and I still talk to him, so I don't think it's too late to say goodbye.
I first met Hal at the first Radical Fairy Gathering in 1979. And he's been a kind of supportive presence in my life, like ever since. He's kind of been there at various sort of junctures in my life. And I love the idea of him as a cheerleader, and I'd love to see him in a cheerleading skirt or something like that. I have that image of him, like pom-poms. Because he's such a playful presence. But his support, as Shantanu said, his affirmation of the work of other people, wasn't just verbal. He actually put it into action. He was somebody who put his faith in you into action. For example, he when I wanted to get a freelance graphics business off the ground, he offered me space in his studio. He fed projects to me to work on, and he just he tried to help me find my way, and so yeah, he's a kind of bodhisattva type presence in people's lives. He just was there to reduce the suffering of others and to help them manifest their higher selves. He was also a great cook. It must be said.
Just one, thank you for giving us part of your time to do this. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And as was mentioned earlier, we have so many connections, and there may be others in our lives who are ill or have needs or have passed away recently, and so we can extend this beauty of the connection that we're experiencing through these memories that we have from Hal, to think about those people and to wish them the support and the communities that they have, the communities to hold them. I know many of you know Baruch, and so Baruch and I have been talking because we both have had visits with our families of origin over this past summer, and and it's like the heteronormativity that exists out there can just leave you cringing with people that you love, just that I love so dearly. And so, as a queer person, it's really important to me to build these communities of connection with, many different people who love me and don't feel the need to just blanket me with ignorance that they don't mean, but we've just been acculturated in these ways that, we have ignorance and around the areas, and heteronormativity is an area of ignorance that many people experience that then, can blanket and decrease connection, even though there's a real sweet love. And so I really don't know what I'm saying here, but I'm just wanting to share around this area of, who are we, who am I, and who are we? This is one of the koans, if you will, who am I in our practice. And I think I have found that in Dharma practice in the West, if we can use that term, it comes to be a real individual question, who am I? As if I could, sit on the cushion long enough and become one with all things. And I do think that is part of the practice, is meditation and learning how to connect and slow down, if you will, pause, be with. And yet I've also really felt that this overlay of individualism that I have been taught through the dominant culture, through my schooling, through my family, I grew up in Massachusetts, Irish Catholic family, very much proponent of getting ahead, immigrant background, hard work, academics, service. So it wasn't that community wasn't there. But that has been conflated for me for a long time in my Buddhist practice, as if I could do it, as if it meant something that I could do. And over the last 13 years or so, I think we're teenagers now, we the East Bay Meditation Center, I really realized the importance of working in community. And communities like this are part of my inspiration, that we can support each other. And so many of you are familiar with the Buddhist story of there's a person who wants to get to the farther shore, which is Nibbana, that place of equanimity, of balance, of freedom from greed, freedom from hatred, freedom from confusion. And so then the teachings are that raft, and the raft is what carries us. And so I realized that for me, within the culture that I'm in, I really thought that there was like an individual me building this raft of the Buddhist teachings to take this particular individual to the farther shore, as if that I could do that. And maybe I spoke to this last time here, so I apologize if it's coming about again. But I really realized how much the raft is like that, this community. And so the image that came to my mind is, like a paddle boat, but like it's like a water wheel, like those old-fashioned water wheels, and like a Ferris wheel kind of thing, and that, so we're all like in this dharmic soup together, and some of us, are underwater paddling as fast as we can, and others, are riding on the top of the Ferris wheel, and we're kind of just going through the samsaric wheel. Some of us more resourced, and then go, the pain and gain and loss, the winds, the worldly winds hit us, and because of this interconnectedness, I am connected to all of that. I'm connected to those deeply, wherever we are on that wheel, gain and loss and praise and blame. And the term that Thich Nhat Hanh uses for that sense of anatta, or no self or not self, or is interbeing, that we inter-are. And really allowing ourselves to live into that sense of what would it mean that you are part of my sacred path. You are part of my liberation. Each person that we meet, each person that we come into is really part of the path to live in that way. And so this sense of, for me, one of the places that I, as a learner, kind of a somatic visual learner at some points, and we have the way that we push things away, and we're like aversive, and the way that we crave when we want things to be a certain way, have a certain ease, a certain comfort. And then there's that place of equanimity that we choose with our loving awareness to turn towards ourselves, turn towards the others, with as much compassion and kindness that we can muster. And so I guess I'm just bringing that to mind right now, this sense of the practice of loving awareness, which is often one of the translations for mindfulness, to bring in this real heart sense of what it means to practice, what it means to be here today, in this community at this time, and be practicing for the liberation of all beings. So, thank you. So I'm noticing the time, and if you could help, we have,
What time is it?
it's 11:39, and we have some time for questions and sharing from the Dharma.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Opening it up to hear about your practice what's alive for you. Yes, please.
Just back to comment, I want to say what's really alive for me is like the sense of community that has just occurred in the last.
Sorry, didn't hear you.
Just a sense of community that has been evoked and shared, and it's currently being experienced. It's quite poignant. It's quite a different experience, really, for me here. So it's like.
This is the point where Hal would ask a comment
Yeah.
or ask a question. He was he was completely engaged, and he wanted, I guess, the speakers to know that he was listening and responding and processing, and that was always an inspiration.
Well, having worked as a public school teacher for a long time, I'm really aware of I don't know if people know this thing about wait time, but there's a lot of research done on wait time, because like when you ask a question, it's actually really important to allow for wait time, because the people who, if you create an atmosphere where the first person who talks is we're encouraging a certain kind of personality. And so in classrooms, it's really important to allow for that wait time and to be okay with that, what we might call pregnant pause. And one of the places of research that always struck me, which was this wave, which gets into our deluded mind, was that generally, culturally, it would be the boys who would answer most quickly when the class was looking at it. And so then the teachers were trained on wait time. And then they would go back and they would test whose hands came up and who was answering first. And when it was equal, when the genders, this was a binary gender study, when it was equal, everybody in the room felt like that the girls weren't getting enough time, were getting too much time. So our sense of privilege is so ingrained that, if we try to make it, if we're so quote unquote leveling the playing field, which to me is an impossibility because we're in the present, we have history or whatever. But so there's that sense of, so to me, wait time is like I'm okay waiting because something will come and it will arise in this way that this group needs. And so I just want to bring that to you, because I also, and as someone who's hard of hearing, I think we communicate in so many different ways, and that words is just one of them. And so, when I say this kind of facetiously to people, especially if they're dear to me and I'm not listening to them, that, you're communicating on many levels, even if I'm not hearing your actual words, so I'm getting what you're saying, and I know you want me to hear your words, but sometimes it's not actually possible. So I do think that is happening as well. So we have, if there's anybody who feels like they want to share, and I know it's kind of a different morning this morning, and so I appreciate your rolling with it and trying it on with us. Please.
I'm more interested in your experience of becoming a genderless person. Is that correct?
Oh, well,
and what do you find is helped be no self, and why you made that decision?
Well, I think of myself, the preferred term that I use is gender queer, because queer is that's queering the view, queering. And so in my world, I would say that it's not genderless, but genderful. But it's kind of those, you could do the koan of full emptiness is full, whatever. So however you want to say it. But a friend of mine has used the term like gender galaxy, not even like a gender, you know. And in that world, like we all almost have our own, like we are all just stars or planets or black holes. If you choose, you know, with comments, you know, maybe I don't know what you want to be, but so that is how the lived experience of each one of us. And so, like, when I look at my life, you know, when I was young, people were calling me Sonny, like, all the time when I was a kid. You know, oh, Sonny, get off of that. Go, Sonny, come on over here. You know, thinking that I was a boy until I reached a certain age. That was okay. You know, and then at a certain age, adolescence, where I imagine there may have been times in your life where the gender roles were more fluid than others. Some people had that experience when they were younger, and some people didn't. I remember my nephew. There was a particular he liked to dress up a lot, and then he realized at one point when he came in for a holiday dinner that he couldn't dress up anymore. But then there were younger nephews, and so then they got to dress up, you know, kind of thing. So he became part of that, and that was a really interesting thing to watch. My brother-in-law kind of being okay with it to a certain degree. My sister, you know, still wanting to encourage it, but trying to conform. And so in middle school, you know, and I'm 57, so it's different. I don't know what would have happened to me if I were younger at this moment now, because I had this idea that, you know, we would move to another city, another town, and I would, you know, and I hadn't read this anywhere, and I would bind my breast, and I would be a boy. And I think about that now, and I think, wow, there are kids who have that thought now, and then there's information out there, and then that can happen. And yet, are we increasing the binary? Are we increasing? Are we increasing the solidity of our labels? Are we decreasing the possibility of existence in the world? And yet I also know that the survival of some of our dearly beloved friends depends on the capacity to transform medically, to transform, you know, in these different ways. And so I don't know what the choice is, because I'm not, you can go back and rewrite our lives, but this is the one I'm living, so this is here I am. And so, you know, I haven't made the choice to have any transgendered surgeries. I have made the choice to get titanium hips. You know, I have like different things that I do to my body for different reasons, and I really fully support people in doing what they need to be whole. So like my, you know, prosthetics, if you will, here internally, you know, and then, you know, I'm looking at whether I'm going to need some for my shoulders, you know, at some point, and I keep kind of wishing, like when I had my hips done, I was like, well, maybe they could just do a 2-for-1, you know, kind of like just, this would be just easy to just kind of, but you know, so for me, it's a long answer to your question about gender full, so, yeah.
I learned a lot because when you came in, I said, can I give you a hug? And you said yes. And I said, well, it must be interesting to get hugs from all these men. And then I go, no, we're just people. Because I could take it genderless that way.
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
And then, you know, I know when I came out in '74, it was so important to be gay. And that was who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And, but then again, I always think it's funny that gay men, we all call each other girl.
Right.
How do titanium hips make you more masculine?
Oh, how do they?
Yeah, I mean, what?
I don't know that they do.
Well, I thought that's what.
No, I'm just saying that people have medical procedures for different reasons, and for yeah. I
thought that was part of your gender realignment.
I guess I could have chosen them. A friend of mine who's gay, he told me at the time that he got pink ones, and I was like, I don't want pink ones. And then I realized he was just joking with me. That they didn't come in different colors. Like the surgeon never asked me what color I wanted. That was just his story about it. So
I thought was maybe I should get titanium hips so I could be more of a masculine guy.
Right, yeah. Please.
As long as you brought up the gender identification topic, with Jerry and here, I've got a question with regard to the, as David referred to, personal pronoun, because it's a third person pronoun. And so if I say he or him, referring to myself, it sounds like what I'm saying is that's how I want to be, because people only use that if I'm not there. Because you wouldn't, if you were talking to me, you'd use a second person, you'd say you. You'd only be using the third person pronoun if I'm not even present. So what difference does it make to me how you're referring to me if I'm not there? Mm-hmm. But what it sounds like you're really asking is how, with what sex or gender do you identify? That sounds like that's more to the point. And in that case, it would be male, female, or genderqueer, or something like that. So it seems like an answer to a sort of oblique question when you could make a more direct question and get a more direct answer. See what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's fascinating because, we're that's like the heteronormativity where some of us are like, I'm so flaming out there, but people still identify me as straight, because that's the norm. And so what I hear you saying is how with language to include the possibility of having more than two genders. And so it seems as though culturally right now, the way that people have sort of sanitized it, if you will, is through asking about pronouns rather than asking about, having to bring it because this language of sex and gender, dare we speak about, sex or gender, and the idea of if you say that you're gay, all of a sudden you're bringing sex into the room. But wait a second, if I were having sex, it might be a different morning, wait. So, it's kind of that, so I'm thinking about this, just the way we use language, so I don't, it's very fascinating, kind of what you're choosing to say. And it's also about the fact that we do refer to people when they're not there, and how do people feel seen, and how do they feel whole, and that, that's the world that we want to live into. Please.
So I just want to respond to that. We actually do have situations in group contexts where we actually do use pronouns. So if we're in small groups, we oftentimes say, if we're talking about our friend, he, she, right in front of them. So rather than having to call that person's name all the time, right, we use a pronoun. So it's good to know that person's pronoun, so that way in front of their face, you're using their preferred pronoun. And then also just in terms of this concept that we have around when we use gay, that means sex. Actually, it means love, too. It means who I love, who I choose to love, not just that it's always about sex.
Right.
That's what gets put upon us in a heteronormative context, but it also means, just like for straight people, who they get to talk about, who they love.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'm pointing to in terms of what you're talking about is so important because, we are creating this community together, and, the bottom line of our community is about love. And so the sense of if I just name myself, all of a sudden somebody might interpret that I'm doing, something, and really it's a loving gift to you to allow me to be fully here. And I sometimes, I try to make light of things saying when just by using the word gay, people think about sex, because that, has been my experience, in working in the public schools. Nobody, I can count, on one hand, the number of times somebody asked me about my partner, because it would be what might they get into? They might hear something that was a little, like, if only, right? You know, if only my world. And, you know, once somebody I taught science, and the fellow next to me, sorry, we're gonna wrap up this, but he ended up sitting in traffic because of Folsom Street Fair. And so that Monday morning, they were going to, I don't remember what they were doing. The city was there with his family, and his family was getting an education. And then he comes in and he's like, "Oh, I was wondering if I was going to see you." I mean, and I'm like, and this is the ignorance that prevails around, like, just the expanding of, like, what it means for us to be possible. And that's where I think, you know, this beautiful, you know, like, we don't want to be complicit in our silence. And so whoever is being targeted, like, the more that we can expand this concept of each other, and the more that we can hold our love for each other, it's just such a powerful practice to me to open my eyes to the suffering, to be able to meet that so that I can meet it in myself. And I'm sorry, I just have to laugh. Like, I mean, like, that morning, I don't know, like, my jaw probably dropped. Like, I was like, okay, this is Monday morning, I think I need my coffee. But, you know, that was like one of the times that somebody brought something up, and I'm like, oh, great. So anyhow, I feel really, really, it brings me a lot of inspiration and hope that this group has been happening for so long, and that people keep coming together and holding the beauty of the Dharma and the beauty of connecting in sangha and practicing. So I'm grateful that I was invited this morning, and I'm grateful to hear all the shares around how, because he truly was a beautiful member of this community, and a beautiful member of many different communities. And when I last saw him, you know, one of the first things he said was how touched he was by all the people who were caring for him in the hospital, you know, just how beautiful they all were. And, you know, that was just so much like him, like, to take it off of himself, and to be like, oh, and this person came in, and, you know, just like, we're, you know, talking to me about all these things that people were supporting him in. And really, like, I was just like, oh, I hope I can be as gracious as he is as he's, you know, the body and the pain and all that happens, and just the beauty in that graciousness. So maybe all be able to embody that grace. And energetically, I don't know this for a fact, but there's many cultures have belief that there's an energetic period of time after someone passes, that there's a capacity to really connect and help influence that person's journey, if you will, person being sort of in quotes. So the journey of the spirit and soul being. And so I do think it's a very powerful thing to spend some time recollecting Hal and sending love his way and holding the community like that. So thank you all.
Right, he is.
He might be here right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen to us.
Right here.
Yeah.
So thank you all.
Thank you, JD.
So are you going to dedicate the merit, or do we do that? I can't remember.
So we'll do announcements.
Okay, great.
And then we will finish by circling on our feet to do that.
Thank you.
Okay.
A little discombobulated.
Before I introduce our host in absentia, are there any announcements? Things coming up or important things we need to know about? I have one, but I'll wait. All right, I'll make my announcement. Oh, please.
It's timely to make an announcement encouraging people who are interested in. We had a compassion in action or some kind of listserv, I forget what it was called, that never really got any traction. But you know, as long as well, we're all subject to old age, sickness, and death. And if you know, I was trying to get together a gift for Hal at one point, and something, you know, that would be meaningful to him. But if people are interested in doing something or being available for something like that, let one of us on the board know.
The book club, book group, reading group is continuing our next meeting because it's usually the first Sunday of the month, but that falls on Labor Day weekend, so we're extending it to September 8th. And we're continuing to read White Fragility. So for people, even though you weren't there last week, it's possible to read the full book before the next time we get together. So if you're interested, that's out in the world. There is like a little bit of there is a sheet if you want to get direct emails about it. I always post something on the Yahoo group, and then I do have email addresses, because not everybody's on the Yahoo group, so I have email addresses for people who are interested, and there is a Google group where people can discuss the book. So if you're interested, you can talk to me or put your name and email, just write really clearly. Yeah.
And even if you don't want to do it, it's just a really strong book to read.
Oh yeah, it's great.
What's the title again?
White Fragility.
White,
the color, and it's by Robin DiAngelo, and it is about the experience and broken. It's a calling on a lot of different writers and thinkers. So it's not just like her own words. It's like that's one thing that's moving about it, is that you get a good understanding of the body of information and thought around this. Is the experience that white people in America, primarily it's about Americans, have in terms of a sensitivity of being aware of their own as a race, like just like whiteness is kind of invisible, and so when confronted by the fact that white people are a race also in the spectrum of like power and privilege and or lack of and oppression, the experience people have of that. So usually there's a defensiveness that comes up among us oftentimes and unpacks that. So it's a great kind of 101 about racism and oppression in America. But specifically in how white people experience it. And the suffering white people, what's at stake for white people around oppression?
And how white people perpetuate it too.
And the perpetuation.
If we sign up, do you send out like a link to some way to read it, or do we go out and buy it?
Yes, individuals are responsible for acquiring the reading on their own. So, however, you need to do that. Library, download and read it. There's different, buy it. It's a New York Times bestseller right now, still on the list. But but people, like participants, are responsible for acquiring the reading on their own. Yeah.
And I have a couple announcements. There's a weekend, Saturday, Sunday next weekend at East Bay Meditation Center that I'm offering if you want to do 2 days of a silent meditation retreat. 10 to 5. I'll be doing that with Jonathan Berlucio at East Bay Meditation Center. I don't have flyers for that. I did put out flyers for 2 other longer meditation retreats that are happening in September. One is a trans, non-binary, gender, non-conforming retreat that's happening outside of LA, Joy in Community. And then there's a nature meditation retreat that's happening at Bayecitos at the end of September. And then just to put a plug for December, I'm going to be assisting on the LGBTQIA retreat at Spirit Rock. So hopefully some of you will go to that one. The main teachers are Anushka and John Martin, so I know many of you.
That's a week-long retreat? Is that the week-long retreat?
Yeah, I think it's 5 days. Yeah. It's in December. It's the first weekend.
Good, thank you. Cass, well, we were really fortunate. David was the host, or one of the hosts, but he couldn't stay, so I'm passing the mic to John Anderson. Thank you, John Anderson.
Just out there, we walk for tea. Some people meet for lunch at 12:30. Jerry may be carrying the dog ball around.
Oh, me?
Yeah. And then there's an email list if you want to sign up for them, and that's if you're not a member of it.
Well, if I'm carrying the Donna bowl around, we suggest a donation between $10 and $20, or whatever else you can give. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we can stand and do the dedication of merit.
JD, would you do the merit?
Sure. knowing how deeply our lives are intertwined, may we remember our connections to the earth, to each other, to all beings, and may we offer any merit of our time together in all directions. May all beings be loved, be safe, be protected from harm, and be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May we offer our merit today in knowing that our actions ripple in all directions.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.